Hey guys, tonight we drift into golden medieval fields where a forgotten grain once fed kingdoms, whispering secrets of the earth under vast, starlit skies. Imagine the soft hush of wind through stalks heavy with promise, the distant low of cattle settling for the night, and the faint scent of damp soil rising after a gentle rain. This is the world of Emmer, the ancient super grain that outshone wheat in flavor, strength, and steadfastness, yet slipped quietly from our tables like a dream at dawn. We'll walk those furrows together, feeling the cool earth beneath our feet, breathing in the rhythm of seasons long past. Close your eyes and let the day's worries dissolve. As we step back into the quiet heart of medieval Europe, sometime around the 10th century, when villages huddled against forests and rivers carved silver paths through the land, Emmer wasn't just any grain. It was the quiet hero of the fields, a hulled wheat zero, with its tough outer husk that protected the precious kernels inside like a mother's embrace. Unlike the fragile modern wheats that bruise and spoil under the slightest hardship, Emmer stood resilient, its golden heads nodding in the breeze, promising nourishment through flood, frost, and famine. Picture a peasant farmer named Tomas, rising before the sun in his thatched cottage on the edges of a misty English manor. The air carries the sharp tang of wood smoke from the dying hearth fire, mingling with the earthy promise of turned soil. He shoulders his wooden plow, the harness creaking softly as he yokes it to a pair of patient oxen, their breath steaming in the chill dawn. The field stretches before him, a vast canvas of dark loam, furrowed from seasons past, waiting for the new sowing. Emmer's seed, saved from last year's harvest, spills from a coarse linen sack, each grain plump and vital, coated in that protective husk that no weevil could pierce. As Tomas guides the plow, the blade slices deep, releasing the rich, loamy scent of the underworld. Wet and alive with worms and hidden life, he scatters the seeds by hand, broadcasting them in wide arcs, their faint patter like distant rain on leaves. The soil receives them greedily, covering them in a gentle blanket of earth, and soon the first green shoots will pierce the surface, tender at first, then strengthening into a sea of slender stalks. This was Emmer's domain, the marginal lands where wheat would falter, the poor soils of rocky hillsides or clay-heavy valleys that drank too much rain or starved in drought. Emmer thrived there, its deep roots clutching the earth like old friends, drawing sustenance where others withered. Through spring, the fields transform. Rain falls in soft veils, drumming on the thatch of Tomas's roof as he mends tools by candlelight, the flicker casting long shadows that dance like harvest spirits. The Emmer grows tall, its leaves whispering secrets to the wind, and by midsummer, under the relentless sun, the heads swell, heavy with grain, the air hums with bees, and the scent of ripening Emmer fills the lanes nutty, warm, with a hint of wild honey. Villagers gather at dusk for the first ritual of harvest, lighting small fires whose smoke curls upward like prayers, thanking the earth for her bounty. Harvest comes under the harvest moon, that great silver orb hanging low and luminous, bathing the fields in ethereal light. Sickles gleam as families work in rhythmic silence. The swish and slice of blades through stalks, a lullaby older than memory. The cut Emmer bundles into sheaves, their husks rustling dryly like autumn leaves, stacked in shocks to dry further under the watchful stars. Tomas wipes sweat from his brow, his hands chafed but content. The taste of fresh-baked Emmer bread from last year lingering in memory, dense, chewy, with a flavor deeper than any pale wheat loaf. But Emmer's true magic lay in the mill, that stone heart of the village. After harvest, the sheaves threshed on barn floors, flails rising and falling in steady cadence, the sharp cracks echoing like distant thunder. Winnowing follows, the grain tossed into the wind on woven trays, chaff flying away like fleeting worries, leaving pure Emmer kernels to fall back into waiting baskets. These kernels, still wrapped in their stubborn husks, travel to the miller's wheel, turned by the patient flow of a nearby stream. The millstones grind with a deep, soothing grind, the rhythm like a giant's heartbeat, slow and eternal. Flour emerges coarse yet fragrant, flecked with the grain's essence, ready for the oven's embrace. In those medieval hearths, Emmer flour kneaded into dough with well water and a pinch of salt, rising slowly under damp cloths as yeast worked its quiet alchemy, the loaves baked on hot stones, the oven's mouth glowing red, filling the air with aromas of toasting nuts and sun-warmed earth. Nobles in distant halls savored Emmer loaves with honey drizzled slow, while peasants supped on porridge simmered long over peat fires, creamy and sustaining. Chasing away the night's chill, Emmer's nutrition whispered of Earth's deepest gifts, richer in proteins and minerals than wheat. Its kernels held more zinc, iron, and B vitamins, fortifying bodies against the plagues and scarcities of the age. That tough husk shielded it from mold and rot, allowing stores to last through brutal winters when wheat granaries failed. In years of flood, when rivers swelled and drowned the lowlands, Emmer's resilience on higher ground saved villages from starvation. It was the grain of survival, modest yet mighty. As Tomas beds down after the harvest feast ale flowing warm, songs murmured low the fields lie, quiet, stubble silver in moonlight, promising renewal come spring. We've only begun to uncover Emmer's story, feeling its roots in the soil of forgotten times. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. Now, as the harvest moon fades and autumn's chill settles like a soft blanket over the land, we follow Tomas back to his cottage, where the Emmer sheaves lean against the walls, their husks whispering in the evening breeze. The air carries the faint, sweet decay of fallen leaves, mingling with the nutty aroma from the granary, where kernels rest safe through the turning seasons. We've tasted the earth's quiet generosity in those first fields. Let us linger longer in the daily rhythms of medieval life, where Emmer wove itself into every breath, every meal, every hope for tomorrow. Dawn breaks grey and misty over the village, the cocks crow muffled by fog rolling down from the hills. Tomas stirs, his joints aching from harvest labors, but the promise of fresh ground Emmer pulls him forth. He joins his neighbors at the communal oven, a squat stone dome at the village heart, its belly stoked with faggots of hazel and oak that crackle softly, sending sparks upward like fleeting stars. Women knead dough in wooden troughs, their hands dusted with coarse Emmer flour, the paste thick and clinging, scented with the faint tang of fermentation from overnight rising. Past the salt, Mary, murmurs one, her voice low as the dough slaps rhythmically against the board. releasing puffs of flour that dance in the morning light. The loaves round and heavy, scored with crosses to let steam escape slide into the oven on wooden peels, the heat enveloping them like a mother's warm embrace. Hours pass in patient vigil, children playing nearby, tossing pebbles into puddles, while elders recount tales of bountiful years, when Emmer fields stretched endless under endless skies. When ready, the loaves emerge golden crusted, their undersides crisp from the stone, steam rising in lazy curls. Tomas breaks one open, the crumb dense and moist, revealing a heart flecked with bran from the unpolished grain. He dips it into a wooden bowl of Emmer porridge, simmered since pre-dawn with goat's milk and a handful of dried apples. The mixture creamy and soothing, coating the tongue with subtle sweetness and earth's deep minerals. For peasants like Tomas, Emmer was morning, noon, and night. At midday, in the shadow of the Lord's domain, laborers paused under spreading oaks, sharing flatbreads baked hasty over open fires. Emmer dough patted thin, toasted golden on hot stones, topped with soft cheese from ewes that grazed the stubble fields. The breads chew resisted teeth, gently releasing flavors of sun-ripened grain and wild herbs crushed between calloused fingers. Evenings brought pottage, a thick stew, where Emmer groats swelled in iron pots over peat embers, absorbing the essences of leeks from the garden roots dug fresh from rain-softened earth, and occasional slivers of salted pork from the autumn slaughter. The steam rose fragrant, carrying notes of soil and hearth, drawing family close around the trestle table as shadows lengthened. Nobles, too, bowed to Emmer's quiet reign, though theirs arrived refined. In a distant castle on the Rhine's banks, Lady Elara presided over halls where tapestries depicted harvest scenes, golden threads capturing Emmer shocks under harvest moons. Her table bore Emmer trenchers, thick slabs hollowed to hold roasted pheasant or river trout, infused with saffron from eastern trades, their crust yielding to knives with a satisfying crackle. Servants ground the grain finer in private mills, powered by donkeys pacing endless circles, the rhythmic thud of pestle echoing like a lullaby. Emmer ale flowed from tankards, brewed strong in lead-lined vats, its malty depth a balm after hunts through dew-kissed forests. "Fill mine again," Elara would whisper to the cabera, the foam clinging like morning mist, the taste lingering warm and full-bodied, far richer than the thin wheat beers that soured to quick. But Emmer's gifts ran deeper than the plate, woven into the body's very resilience. Imagine a winter stark, an unrelenting, snow-blanketing fields in silence, winds howling through chinks in cottage walls. Wheat granaries mold and fail, their naked kernels succumbing to damp. But Emmer's husks stand sentinel, impervious to rot, preserving the harvest's heart through months of siege. Healers in village huts praised its virtues, kernels bursting with zinc to mend wounds from scythe or plough, iron to color cheeks against pallor, B vitamins to steady nerves frayed by endless toil. Those with tender guts, tormented by wheat's sharp gluten, found solace in Emmer's milder embrace, its proteins gentler, allowing bread and broth without the cramping agony that bent others double. Through plague years, when shadows lengthened over Europe in the 14th century, Emmer fields on stubborn hillsides yielded where lowlands drowned in fever. Villages that clung to the old grain watched neighbors starve, their stores enduring as black rats scurried unchecked. A monk in a scriptorium, quill scratching by beeswax light, noted in Latin margins, Emmerum solvas knows, the grain that saves us, its nutrition fortifying blood against pestilence's grasp. Children grew sturdy on it, their laughter ringing clearer in spring lanes. While wheat-fed kin faltered, bones brittle as winter twigs. Season by season, Emmer-shaped lives, spring sowing under April showers. Seeds nestled in furrows slick with mud, the scent of wet earth rising like renewal's breath. Summer's languid heat coaxed heads to swell, birds wheeling overhead in azure skies. Their calls a counterpoint to the rustle of maturing stalks. Autumn harvest bound communities in shared labor. Feasts under lantern glow, where fiddles played soft, voices rising in harvest hymns. Golden grain, earth's quiet gift. Fill our barns through winter's drift. Winter stored its safe, husks crackling under probing. Fingers, kernels rattling like hidden treasure. Tomas, now graying, posses the plough to his son, recounting nights when Emmer porridge chased famine's spectre, days when its bread fueled the building of cathedral spires, piercing cloudy skies. In markets, sacks traded hands, the weight reassuring, the miller's scales tipping slow under candle flicker. Emmer bridged lives from serf to squire, its steady presence a thread in time's vast tapestry. Yet even as it nourished, whispers of change stirred in distant ports, where ships from the New World would one day bring strangers to the fields. For now, though, the nights deepen, hearths glow, and Emma sustains in silence, we'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. Winter has settled now, and the world outside Tomas's cottage lies hushed under a quilt of snow. The Emmer grain, stacked tight in its woven bins, rests patiently in the granary. Through the cool stillness, the scent of straw and stored grain lingers faintly rich, nutty, reassuring. The people rest too, though never entirely. There are tools to mend, beasts to tend, bread to bake, and quiet stories told by candlelight of past years when the snow fell deeper, or the river froze solid by Christmas. These are the months of Emma's slow reward. In the chill of morning, Tomas's wife Anya tends a small pot on the hearth. Within, Emmer kernels simmer gently with milk and a touch of honey. The grains bloom as they cook, swelling and releasing an aroma that fills the cottage like warmth itself soft, earthy. A fragrance that promises both nourishment and continuity. She stirs with a wooden spoon long worn smooth. The sound of grains against the pot like a gentle rain on roof thatch. Their children gather, sleepily, rubbing eyes heavy with dreams. They take their bowls in silence, too young to name gratitude, but feeling it nonetheless, outside. The oxen breathe clouds of mist, the hens scuffle in hay, and smoke climbs into the brightening sky. Around a table of hewn oak, Tomas says only, "May the seed sleep sound and wake well come spring." His words, more habit than prayer, drift up in the dim light, and in them lie centuries of faith in the land, in the grain, in the endless rhythm of sowing and reaping. When the snow melts weeks later, the fields reveal themselves again flattened, brown, and littered with straw, but ready. The air carries that first metallic scent of thawing soil. The river swells with green-brown water, and the larks return overhead. Tomas walks the field's edge with his son, now near grown. They trace last year's furrows and choose the upland slope for their spring plowing rocky. Yes, but kind to Emmer. For though soil rich and loamy suits most crops, Emmer laughs at hardship. It thrives best where the land challenges rather than yields easily. A bright morning sees plough and ox again at work. Frost still clings at the edges of the fields, but the mid-ground darkens with new furrows. In each one go handfuls of seed, tiny emblems of tomorrow, cast by rough, practiced hands. Some fall straight and vanish, others land awkwardly on stones or clods. It makes no matter, for most find a home, and that is enough. Nature has no perfection here, only persistence. In the evenings, Tomas and Anya mend sacks, repair harnesses, and dry herbs from last year's sage, fennel, and tansy to flavor winter fare or ward off illness. The miller passes by one dusk, his cloak powdered white with flour, a shutter lantern swinging in his grasp. He brings news from other villages, a shortage of wheat in the lowlands, mold in the oat stores. But the Emmer farmers on the hills still eating well. He laughs softly. The earth tests us, he says, but she remembers who keeps faith. The months roll in like quiet tides, May hums with insect wings. The hedgerows explode pink and white. Bees labor from dawn until dusk, and the Emmer lifts toward the sun. Each blade holds a shimmer of "Do it dawn," silver beads strung across the field like forgotten jewelry. When the wind blows, the stalks sway together as though the whole land were breathing. To walk through it is to be swallowed by gold, surrounded on all sides by sound, and scent the faint rasp of awns against cloth, the sweetness of pollen, the deep hum of the soil's secret life beneath the roots. Tomas pauses midfield and runs a handful of green heads through his fingers. Inside each, tight clusters of kernels form future bread, future life. He thinks of the seasons ahead, the cutting and threshing, the feast that follows. He thinks of famine stories from his grandfather's youth, when the wheat failed and half the tenantry moved on. Those tales no longer haunt him. They live as reminders that fortune favors patience, not haste. In the village, midwives and elders all mark such times by the grain. They know to bring broth of Emmer to the birthing bed, its warmth steady, its nourishment lasting. For the sick, thick gruel sweetened with honey revives the body when bitter herbs alone fail. The monks at the abbey beyond the river favor it, too. The brothers grind it by hand with small quarrons, reciting psalms as the stones turn slowly, endlessly, the rhythm rising like a chant. That flower, unbolted and rough, feeds travelers who seek shelter within abbey walls. By grain, God sustains, says Brother Havel, handing a steaming loaf to a passing pilgrim. No one then could imagine a world without this grain. To them, it was not rare or precious, it was ordinary, and in that ordinariness lay its grace. When young men marched off to wars or plagues thinned the villages, the fields still grew. The seed waited as always, sleeping deep in sacks woven from last year's flax. Later that summer, a storm brews over the horizon, dark and full-bellied. The villagers watch from their doorways as lightning forks in the distance, turning fields momentarily silver. Rain lushes the land, breaking stalks and washing furrows into rivulets. Tomas dreams that night of grain bending, but not breaking it endures the storm, and when dawn comes, he finds it mostly true. The Emmer stands battered, but unbowed, its thick stalks and tight-sealed husks sparing it from ruin. Wheat might have failed, but Emmer never yields easily. Weeks later, the clouds clear, and sunshine returns. Birds descend again, pecking at insects along the turned soil. Children chase them laughing, and the world feels righted. Tomas stoops among his plants, fingers the resilient heads. He smiles faintly. This grain remembers who tends it. He murmurs. Through these days, the rhythm of life is serene, repetitive, and reassuring. Mills grind and turn, ovens crackle, crows gather above the stubbled fields. The air smells always faintly of husk and ash, of baked bread and distant rain. It would seem to anyone passing through that nothing could change such patterns. That Emmer's golden reign would last as long as rivers ran and trees budded in spring. But time, like the turning wheel of the mill, never pauses. Somewhere far beyond the valley, a new kind of wheat, softer to grind, easier to thresh, faster to yield, takes root. The great fields of Europe will soon hum to the sound of different harvests. But here, for now, the old ways hold. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. By late summer, the fields glow like a sea of amber, light shimmering on each head of grain as though the sun itself has chosen to rest there. The air hums with the faint song of crickets. Bees drowse lazily along the furrows, and the scent of ripening emmer rises the deep. Toasted fragrance of bread not yet born. It is a season suspended between fullness and fading, that soft melancholy before harvest. When the land holds its breath, and the people do too, Tomas walks the boundary of his field, the wooden handle of his sickle warm in his grasp. He remembers every inch of this land, the hollow where rain gathers, the ridge where the soil grows thin and stubborn, the curve of meadow leading toward the willows by the brook. Each ear of Emmer sways in rhythm as he pauses, whispering against the wind. He pauses to test a grain between his teeth. It breaks crisp, clean, full. The old saying comes to him unbidden. When Emmer bites sweet, the barn will never empty. Soon, the whole village will gather for the harvest. It is not just work. It is celebration, communion, prayer, and relief joined together. As dawn breaks the morning of cutting, the mists lift in long white veils from the hollows. Sickles glint. The first swing of the blade through stalks sighs softly, like someone exhaling after holding in a long breath. Women bind sheaves with twine made from last year's flax, the bundles standing upright in neat lines that dot the field like patient soldiers. The cut straw scratches against their fingers, but its golden light softens the ache. They sing as they were close songs, simple and repetitive, meant to match the rhythm of bending and rising, the turning of the earth beneath bare feet. A distant church bell rings midday, its sound carrying over the valley like the slow tolling of time itself. By dusk the stooks are stacked, each one smelling of sun, sweat, and plenty. The people sit in the grass with mugs of small ale brewed from last year's grain. The bubbles tickle their lips, the taste earthy and faintly sour. Tomas gazes across the field, every bundle backlit by the last edge of gold on the horizon. "We are blessed again," he whispers. "The threshing will come next." In the barn, flails swing in steady patterns, the sound of impact sharp and satisfying, as though the wood itself keeps time with the heart. The chaff rises around them in motes of golden dust, catching the light from small windows high above. Coughs mingle with laughter. Then, outside, baskets of grain are lifted and tossed into the wind so the husks can drift away, slow and weightless as autumn leaves. But Emma still wears its protective skin tightly. It must go to the mill, where the millstones hum and the river wheel creaks as it turns. Inside the mill house, the air is thick with flour dust that coats every surface in white haze. The wheel outside churns slow, steady arcs, turning the gears that move the heavy stones. Their grinding fills the room with a deep, humming vibration that can be felt more than heard a pulse of centuries. The echo of generations who labored the same work. The miller, a stout man with arms powdered ghost pale from years among the stones, draws Tomas close to watch. "See there," he says, lifting a handful of freshly hulled Emmer. The grains flash in the light tunny, plump, perfect. They smell faintly sweet, like crushed straw and warm dust. That flour travels then to every hearth, some to the Lord's kitchen, where it will become crisp pastries filled with spiced apples, some to the alehouse to be brewed into hearty drink, and some to Tomas's cottage, where Anya shapes it into loaves again. The bread emerges fragrant, with a crust as firm as old bark, and a crumb dense enough to fill an evening as hunger. She sets it on the table, next to a pot of beans and leeks, a jug of ale, and a wedge of cheese veined blue-gray. The family eats slowly, savoring each mouthful. Not because of manners, but because the year's labor deserves reverence. Meals made from Emma have a particular satisfaction. They linger not in heaviness, but in calm. When the family eats together, there is quiet conversation about neighbors and fields, about the mason repairing the church wall, or a rumor of wolves deeper in the forest. Life is small, contained, and complete. The lantern flickers, lighting the faces around the table in warm halos, and outside. The night wraps around their home like a cloak. Meanwhile, beyond the valley, merchant travelers pass through with carts of salt, wine, and news. They carry stories of cities where new kinds of wheat are being bred, grains that shed their husks more easily, that yield more sacks per acre, that thresher machines can manage faster. Tomas listens politely when such men speak at the tavern, but says little. He trusts what he has seen with his own eyes, that Emma feeds through drought, through frost, through flood, while wheat bows to misfortune at the first sign of neglect. Yet change has a way of creeping like water through cracked stone. In towns, bakers begin to prize the new flours, smooth and white, that make lighter bread for merchants and nobility. They speak of Emma as old-fashioned, coarse, the food of peasants. Grain merchants find it cumbersome to ship. The hulls add weight and labor. Slowly, imperceptibly, sacks of Emmer become fewer in the markets. The old mills that know how to grind it stand quiet longer each winter. But back in the valley, none of this seems yet real. The people live by the calendar of the soil, not of the city. They watch birds migrate south, They count the days until the frost hardens the puddles again. Anya stores away the grain, sewing the tops of the linen sacks shut. The scent of harvest still lingers in her hands, rich and wholesome. Later, in the dark months, she kneads dough by the firelight to gain a steady motion of hand and wrist, the sigh of bread on stone. She hums a tune as she works, one her mother sang in kitchens long gone. Tomas sits nearby, mending leather, the flames catching the grey in his beard. This bread, he says quietly, has the taste of time itself. Anya smiles, eyes half closed from weariness. Then time has a good heart, and outside, in the quiet field where stubble pokes through snow, a few stray heads of Emmer stand uncut, golden even in winter's faint sun. Soon they will fall and scatter their seeds, lying hidden beneath frost until spring calls them awake once more. A promise sleeping beneath the world, waiting, waiting. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. Spring comes quietly again, as it always has, soft and hesitant at first, then brimming with the joy of renewal. The frost withdraws slowly from ditches and hedgerows, and tender grass pushes up through the old snow-matted straw. The sky glows paler now, washed clean by rain. Tomas wakes to the calls of blackbirds on the fence, their songs clear, like silver threads sewing the morning together. In the yard, the air is alive with the scent of damp earth and smoke. Anya sets a small bowl of last year's seed on the table. Emmer grains, warm-hued and glossy, catch the light as though holding the promise of summer within them. She runs her fingers through the bowl, listening to the Ratalan old music, the song of survival. Tomas joins her, and they share a look that speaks of habit and hope. The land still knows us, she says. He nods slowly, and the grain still remembers. They walk together to the fields. Along the way, meltwater trickles down the cart paths, the sound steady and restful. They pass grazing sheep. They were heavy with dew, and distant plumes of smoke rising from neighbors' cottages. Each field smells different, the lower ground rich and loamy, the higher parts sharp with stone and clay. As Tomas casts the seed into the furrows, the wind lifts it briefly before settling it back, as though the world itself takes part in the sowing. Time stretches in this rhythm. Each year feels much like the last, yet each has its subtleties, the shade of the sky, the hum of bees, the taste of the first new loaf when the harvest ends. Emmer binds all these moments together. Its flavor and scent live in memory as clearly as a child's laugh or the smell of smoke after rain. In the market at midsummer, new voices mingle with familiar ones. Traders speak now of progress of fields that yield doubled harvests and grain that threshes clean. In their hands are samples of bright, smooth wheat, cold and pale to the touch. Town bakers, they say, demand this new flour. Nobles will pay better for it. It is the future. One merchant laughs, slapping the side of his wagon, the sacks inside marked with strange seals and new words from the milling guilds. Tomas listens but says nothing. He has seen many things come and go, the plagues, the wars, the lords who built and fell. The earth endures, and the seed that survives within it is the truest inheritance. Still, he feels something move inside him, an unease like the slow shifting of wind before a storm. That year the rains do not come as they should. Clouds drift by but shed little, and cracks open in the clay between rows. Wheat in nearby manors shrivels under the sun, its fine stalks brittle as parchment. Emmer, though, stands steady. Its roots reach deep. When thunder finally breaks the drought, sending rain in silver sheets across the valley, the older grain drinks greedily, bowing only to rise stronger afterward. At harvest, Tomas's field gleams, where others lie patchy and thin. The village gathers to thresh and winnow as always. The air turns golden under swirling dust, and the rhythmic thump of flails beats steady through the day. The sound is almost sacred life's quiet drum. Later, over ale and bread, a younger farmer approaches Tomas. Why not change? The youth asks. The buyers want wheat now. The millers, too. It's supposed to be easier. Tomas smiles faintly, his face lined by years of wind. Easier, he repeats, but not truer. He gestures toward the field beyond the barn, where sacks of Emmer lean heavy against the wall. That grain, he says, asks little, gives much, and never betrays the hand that tends it. There is wisdom in hard work, as there is spirit in old soil. The younger man nods, uncertain, watching the play of firelight across the barn's rough beams. Outside, rain drips steady from the eaves. The world, it seems, teeters between two ways of living the hurried new and the steadfast old. Years pass, seasons blur together, as they do when one measures time by harvests rather than calendars. Tomas grows slower, his hands cracked and thickened, his gait more deliberate. The Emmer still waves each summer on the slope behind the cottage, glowing like brass under the sun. But fewer neighbors plant it now. Some sell their land to the monastery, some follow trade to the cities, others surrender to the comfort of the new, effortless wheat. What disappears first is the sound, the deeper crackle of Emmer straw when cut, its husks soft rattle stored in barns. Then the taste, the bread darker, richer, the porridge flecked with the faint sweetness that lingers at the back of the mouth. A kind of silence seeps into the valley, unnoticed at first. One evening in early autumn, Tomas sits outside his doorway, the last light falling thin across the stubbled fields. He holds a few kernels in his palm and studies them, running a thumb over their rough husks. Around him, the world feels strangely still. The younger ones will not know this taste, he murmurs, or its patience. He tips his hand and lets the grain fall, hearing the small, perfect sound of it striking the ground. Inside, Anya stirs soup over the fire emmer and lentils, seasoned with leek and salt. The smell fills the low room, soothing and nostalgic. When Tomas enters, she smiles quietly and ladles out to bowls. They eat slowly, neither speaking. The soup is simple, thick, and steadying. Between spoonfuls, the clocked rhythm of the spinning wheel sounds like soft rain. And outside, the wind runs its fingers through the stubble of the old field. In towns miles away, bakers work through the night to feed growing cities. Markets bristle with gleaming white bread-dairy loaves that crumble like snow when torn apart. The wealthy praise their lightness. The peasants, when they can afford them, marvel at their size. Yet some whisper that they leave the stomach hollow too quickly, lacking the strength of the older loaves, the strength that once built cottages, raised children, endured winters. But no one listens long. The world is moving faster now. Back in the valley, Tomas keeps sowing his Emmer, though the sacks grow fewer each year. "Let it live here as long as I do," he says once to his son, who will one day leave for the south to find labor in the towns. The old grain carries the stories of our kind. It knows the sound of true rain. In his final harvest, when age has bent his spine and dimmed his sight, the field still stands tall, amber against the late sun. He walks among it slowly, trailing his fingertips along the taut stalks, feeling their rushes against his skin. He listens. The field speaks as it always has in the rustling language of patience, saying things the world has forgotten how to hear. And for a moment, he feels time circle back upon itself. He sees his father, young and strong, casting the first handful of seed into wet furrows. He smells the bread of his childhood, dark and fragrant, pulled from the oven's stone. He hears the mill wheel turning, the steady sound of labor and care. The memory swells like music, then fades, replaced by the present hush of wind and light. He closes his eyes and thinks, perhaps the grain still remembers. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. After Tomas pauses, the seasons continue without pause, as they always do. The cottage remains, crouched low against the slope, its thatch silvered by rain and years. Weeds creep along the threshold, and the wooden door hangs slightly askew. Yet behind the barn, the Emmer still grows. Each spring it rises again sparser now, wild almost but alive, as though remembering the touch of a hand long gone. His son, Elias, returns home after years in the southern towns. There, he had worked as a cooper, shaping barrels for merchants who traded in wheat and ale. In the city, the air had smelled of smog and tanneries, and the bread, though white and light, felt like dust in his teeth. When he heard of his father's death, he came back north, expecting an empty field, a silent place. What he finds instead is the unyielding gold of late summer stretching before him, the stalks swaying slow under a sky washed clean by rain. For a long time, he simply stands in it, the grain brushing his knees. The sound fills the space around him, soothing, timeless, real in a way the city never was. In that sound he hears echoes, the thud of flails, the laughter of neighbors during harvest feasts, the low hum of the millstones as flour fell like pale snow. He remembers the rough crust of his mother's bread, its scent drifting down the lane at dusk, mingling with the smoke of the hearth. He feels something stir in him, a longing, or perhaps an inheritance that waited quietly all these years. That evening he pushes open the cottage door. Dust motes drift in slanted light. The air smells faintly of straw and memory. On the table lies his father's sickle, blade dull but whole. Beside it, an earthen jar of seed wrapped in linen. On the lid, carved faintly in the old man's hand, a few words, "Keep planting." Elias sits for a long while listening to the rain pattering softly on the roof. The world outside is changing faster than he can name it. Markets, machines, new rulers, new hunger, but this quiet place seems untouched, as if time itself hesitates here. he decides, as his father asked, that he will sow the grain again come spring, not for profit, not even for memory, but simply because the land deserves a familiar hand. When spring arrives, he plows the worn field alone. His oxen are gone, the plow leaner now, drawn by his own back and sweat. The soil crumbles in his palms, dark and pliant. With each throw of seed, he feels the distance between him and his father lessening, the silence between generations closing like a wound. The wind spins chaff into sunlight, glimmering in the air before sinking back to earth. Villagers from nearby hamlets pass by sometimes, pausing to stare, still growing the old grain. One calls from the road. Elias only smiles in reply, still feeding the old ground. He says, "Summer grows heavy again. The Emmer rises tall, seeded thick. Storms pass, locusts come and go, bending weaker crops to ruin. But his grain holds. He learns to read its moods the way stems darken before rain, the tilt of the heads before ripening. He hears what his father once called the voice of the field, that low, sighing speech that only those who listen long enough can understand. When harvest comes, the work is modest, the yield small. But when he breaks the first loaf baked from that grain, the taste is unlike anything from the city. The texture is firm, the crust deep and crackling, the scent earthy, like the first breath after a storm. As he eats alone by the fire, he feels as if centuries have gathered quietly round his table, the peasants who cut their grain by candlelight, the monks who prayed over boiling porridge, the mothers who kneaded dough and sang softly to keep babies calm. The world outside the valley may no longer remember Emmer, but here it endures, even in small corners. And as years pass again, Elias tends the crop each season. His beard whitens, his back bends, yet every harvest brings the same quiet joy. In town, the merchants trade gleaming sacks of factory-milled wheat. But when Elias brings his rough, hulled kernels to market, some still pause. A baker with clever eyes, a mother with a sickly child, or an old man who remembers the taste of darker bread, they come close, curious. "What grain is this?" they ask. Older than memory, Elias replies gently, weighing the seeds in his hand. The kind that fed entire centuries. Some take small amounts to try. Most return, surprised by their own longing for its flavor, the way it fills rather than fades, the way it steadies rather than merely sweetens. Word spreads quietly along the trade roads, not through merchants, but through kitchens and hearths. People begin to ask again, why did we ever stop growing it? As he grows frail, Elias leaves the care of the land to a young woman from the next village, Maren. She listens as he tells her the old ways, the timing of sowing, the cutting before storms, the patience required in threshing. Don't rush the grain, he tells her. It knows how to wait if you let it. Years later, when Elias pauses, Maren keeps tending the field. She teaches her children how to bake the old bread, how to grind the flour with handstones, how to winnow the kernels in the sighing wind. They laugh that the work seems endless, but on winter days when the fire burns low, and their bellies are warm with Emmer porridge, they understand something deeper. This grain is not just food, it is memory that you can taste. And beyond the valley, though few know it yet, the world begins to turn again. Scholars and farmers rediscover the old seeds in forgotten archives and ancient jars. They test the soil, plant small plots, and marvel. Resilient, they write, eyes wide, rich in nutrients. Torrent of cold, journalists call it a lost superfood, chefs praise its flavor, and slowly, the name Emmer returns to lips long unused to saying it. But in this quiet valley, where the moon turns the stubble silver, none of that matters much. For here, where the cottages lean toward the hill, and the millstone still hums to the sound of water, it never truly vanished. The fields keep whispering, the grain keeps growing, the people keep listening. Centuries have passed, yet the same smell of damp loam rises after rain. The same low laughter drifts from the oven door when bread comes forth. The same sense of calm hums in the spaces between chores, as though time itself nods approvingly. And if you were to walk there tonight, you'd hear it to the slow rustle of stalks under moonlight, the soft breath of earth dreaming. You might kneel and run your fingers through the soil, feeling the hidden seeds waiting for spring. Still there, still patient, still alive. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. The valley sleeps beneath a gentle sky, right? Stars hang like quiet lanterns, shimmering in a wash of blue-black, while the fields below glow faintly in their light. It's like nature's own little light show, you know. Each head of grain sways with the breeze's slow wave, soft and hypnotic, almost like the land itself is breathing in a deep, peaceful sleep. Through this serene world, the story of Emmer unfolds, thread-like, delicate, and unbroken. Morin's children have grown tall now, their hair sun-bleached from countless sunny days, and their hands are brown from all the hard work. You can almost picture them running around, laughing and helping their mom with chores. The old mill still hums faithfully by the brook, its wool turning in a rhythm that feels older than any song. The water sparkles under the moonlight, catching silver as it flows past, making everything feel magical and alive. Inside, the air is thick with the warm, faintly sweet scent of milled grain, a smell that carries the weight of centuries, wrapping you in nostalgia. Morin keeps her father's sickle hanging by the hearth. Sometimes, on those long winter evenings, when the wind rattles the shutters and the fire crackles softly, she runs her fingers over its handle, tracing the smooth groove worn by generations. It's not just a tool, it's a connection to her past. The blade has dulled over the years, its edge more memory than metal, but to her, it feels alive. It carries the touch of hands from 100 years ago, hands that worked the fields, pulled thrashing blades, and cut the first sheaves under the early morning sun. When spring rolls around, the village stirs with planting. The days slowly lengthen, light unfurling through mist-draped mornings. Morin sows the grain just like her mother and grandfather did before her. Her children laugh and chase each other down the furrows, scattering seed wherever they see fit. It's a joyful chaos. The kernels fall with soft, rhythmic sounds, a rain of promise against the soil, each one a tiny hope for the future. The earth, grateful for the care, begins its quiet labor. Emmer roots take hold easily, their fibers running deep beneath stones and clay where water waits unseen. As the weeks pass, Those pale green shoots break through the soil, sharpening and lengthening, reaching for the sun. By midsummer, the valley sways in one vast shimmer, and the rustling of grain becomes the language of all things wind, sun, bird, and human breath woven together in a beautiful tapestry of life. One afternoon, travelers arrive from the lowlands, a pair of scholars on horseback, their clothes dusty from long roads. They stop at Morin's door, asking for a drink of water. Sitting by the threshold with mugs of well-cooled drink, they chat about fields far away where wheat reigns supreme, of mills driven by steam, and markets crowded with shiny silver coins. The world, they say, is moving faster now. Bread white as snow sells twice over. Why keep this ancient grain? They ask kindly. It's harder to clean, slower to yield. Morin listens, a slight smile playing on her lips. She gestures to the slope beyond her yard, where the Emmer waves dense and golden. Because, she says, it does not forget. The travelers tilt their heads, puzzled. Forget, one repeats. She nods, her voice steady and warm. New crops feed the body. This one feeds the land. Look at the soil when its roots lift, it's richer than before. And look at my hands. No blight, no hunger here. Even when the rains fail, the travelers exchange glances, their curiosity piqued. One jots down notes, while the other simply sips her water and watches the field's endless motion. Later, as they depart, she turns once more to see it. It looks alive, she whispers, and you can feel the weight of her words hanging in the air. When harvest time comes, the air hums thick with light. The grain bends but never falls, and each stalk glows with a dull bronze sheen, a sight to behold. Morin's family cuts together, their laughter blending with the soft hiss of drying stalks. The ritual hasn't changed in centuries, the same rhythm of motion. The same songs sung low to match the swing of the scythe. Each sheaf bound tight feels like holding onto time itself, a connection to summers past and those still to come. After days of threshing, they gather by the hearth to share the first new bread. The crust cracks gently beneath their hands. The crumb within is dense, dark, and powerful. When they eat, silence settles full and content. The grain's taste is the same as her mother's and her mother's before, earthy, a little sweet, carrying something of rain, smoke, and old sunlight. It's a taste that tells stories, a taste that feels like home. Later, when the house quiets and the moon climbs higher, Morin steps outside. The sky shimmers endlessly, stars mirrored in the dark surface of the brook. She looks over her field, feeling the pulse of life beneath it still strong. The world beyond these hills may be changing, rushing forward with wheels and forges and a hunger for novelty. But here, among the stubble and shadow, nothing is lost, only waiting. She kneels and presses her palm to the soil. It's cool, alive, and faintly breathing. Somewhere beneath, seeds lie ready for spring, their shells hard, their hearts beating in stillness. Sleep well, she whispers. We'll wake together when the thaw comes. The brook answers, whispering softly through stone, as if it understands the bond between Morin and her land. The sky bends down, wrapping the valley in a deep, gentle hush. Another year closes, and the fires burn low. The smell of grain and ash lingers in the air like memory itself sweet, heavy and eternal. And though no one marks the years precisely anymore, the land remembers each one. The Emmer remembers, the millstone remembers, and the story keeps moving forward, slow and kind, through the hands that continue to listen. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part, exploring more of Moran's journey, the whispers of the land, and the stories waiting to unfold. There's so much more to discover, and I can't wait to share it with you. Morning spills lightly across the hills, the mist thinned by warmth from a rising sun. Somewhere far away, a church bell tolls for prime, its faint sound carried downriver by the wind. The valley wakes slowly, smoke curls upward from cottage chimneys, mingling with the perfume of newly cut stalks left drying in the fields. And in the heart of it all, the old mill hums again its wheel turning, steady and low, as if repeating a prayer too ancient to name. Moran's son, Aldrich, now grown tall and broad-shouldered, tends the stones. His hands are white with flour, his face calm, his movements practiced to quiet harmony. Grain pours between the millstones like a golden river. The sound of its grinding fills the mill in a soft, meditative rhythm. Each turn of the wheel seems to breathe. Each sigh of dust caught in sunlight an echo of his grandfather, and those before him. Outside, carts rattle across the bridge, wheels creaking under sacks of grain bound for the markets beyond. Aldrich pauses, listening, and wonders about those faraway towns' places his father spoke of, but never saw. He's heard rumors of new machines that thresh, sift, and grind faster than any man or river could ever hope to. Mills of steam instead of water. Fields of uniform wheat that never need husking. Easy grain, they call it. Grain for the age of progress. But here, progress moves at the pace of seasons. Aldrich prefers it that way. He watches the chaff rise in slow spirals under shafts of dusty light, and imagines the same dance seen by hands centuries old. Every particle catching sunlight seems to shimmer with history, each one a memory, an echo of stone against stone, year after unbroken year. As autumn deepens, traders from the city pass more often through the valley. They look upon the mill with polite curiosity, but seldom stop for trade. Steam mills, they say, are cheaper now, their flour finer, their yields larger. The merchants speak briskly, as if the world itself hurries on unseen rails. Aldrich listens with a calm expression, though in his chest he feels the quiet ache of something slowly fading. At mealtime, Moran sits by the fire, her hair silvering in the lamplight. She ladles out bowls of Emmer stew dense with lentils, onions, and barley greens. Her children eat silently, the sound of spoons against clay rhythmic as rain. They say we'll all move to the cities. One day, Aldrich murmurs, almost to himself. They say it's cleaner there, easier. Moran smiles faintly. Cleaner, perhaps. But can they smell the bread? He looks up, puzzled. She nods toward the hearth, where loaves rest cooling on the stones. The crusts glisten faintly in the fire's glow, their scent swallowing the space between walls. It smells of nut and fire, of warm evenings, of care made tangible. No city scent could match it. Outside, the evening wind carries the fragrance into the lane. down toward the riverbank where reeds whisper in the dark. Neighbors passing pause to breathe it in almost unconsciously. It is the smell of survival, of patience, of something older than progress, a reminder of the quiet rhythm that built this valley. But even steadfast traditions yield, little by little. When winter comes, fewer wagons stop at the mill. Word spreads that the new wheat mills can grind 10 sacks to Aldrich's one, and without the clumsy business of cracking stubborn husks. Farmers begin switching seeds. Fields that once gleamed bronze now fade into the paler gold of common wheat. Snow arrives early that year. The millstones slow, then still entirely as the brook freezes to glass. Aldrich spends his evenings mending tools, oiling the wheel, and watching the sky darken early above the empty fields. Maren coughs often by the hearth, her body grown frail, her eyes still sharp with thought. One evening she calls him over, her voice thin but sure. The grain will go away for a time, she says, but only for a time. The earth doesn't forget what it loves. He nods, though he doesn't understand fully. She gestures toward a small wooden chest she's kept by the bed. Inside, there are jars seed from last harvest. Keep it dry. Keep it safe. If the town stops planting, you will plant here. When spring comes again, Maren is gone. The fields, though mostly bare, still hold patches of her grain in the corners where the plows missed. Aldrich kneels by them, tosses his hand through the stalks, and thinks of her words. There's sorrow in him, and stubborn pride too. He will not let it be forgotten. Yet the world has already begun its turning. Steam engines now echo in the distant steel wheels clattering on invisible tracks. The valley trembles faintly under their passage, a noise like thunder that doesn't fade. Travelers hurry to catch markets, letters, machines. Children talk of leaving for places where work never sleeps. Aldrich keeps the old rhythm as best he can. He tends the brook, patches the wheel, sows what seed remains. He knows the yield will be small, but it's enough. Some days he grinds wheat for the neighbors to earn their trust and coin. But some nights, when all the lamps have dimmed, he takes out the hidden jars and grinds Emmer again. The stones breathe differently over it, heavier, slower, more forgiving. The flour, coarse and fragrant, gathers beneath the stones like drifted snow. When he bakes with it, the smell fills the mill once more. Travelers passing late sometimes glimpse that solitary light through the shutters, and catch that scent, and though they do not name it, they slow their step. It reminds them of somewhere or someone they've lost but cannot recall. The world outside moves forward in smoke and invention, but here, where the wheel still turns on water and memory, an older order persists, and through it all, the grain endures patient, silent, patient again. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. The centuries turn as quietly as pages in a forgotten book. One winter fades into another. One harvest follows the last, until more than time itself has changed. The world beyond Aldrich's valley grows unrecognizable, faster and louder than the rhythm of wind through grain could ever match. The age of iron has arrived. The first sight of it comes not by rumor, but by sound. In the distance, from beyond the northern ridge, a deep metallic whistle cuts through the morning haze, long, mournful, unending. Aldrich looks up from his plough. The oxen startle, snorting mist into the cold air. Across the valley, black smoke rises like a strange new cloud, unmoving against the pale sky. It is the railway. The train's arrival changes everything, and yet, somehow, nothing at all. The river still murmurs past his fields. The stones still turn in patient circles. But the world has picked up a new rhythm of faster pulse, like a heartbeat gone to race. For the first time, strangers pour through the valley not on foot, but on carriages of iron. They move quickly, their coats clean, their speech clipped and metallic. They ask after land, timber, and crop yields. They speak of efficiency and expansion, words that sound sharp to Aldrich's ear. Within a few years, new mills rise near the track store, angular buildings of stone and brick, their chimneys towering like keels of upside-down ships. Steam engines thunder inside, the ground trembling under their pistons and belts. The air fills with soot, and the smell of progress smothers the scent of soil. Aldrich's watermill stands quiet now, already older than memory. The merchants call it quaint a remnant. They offer him money to sell it, or to buy his grain outright. For blending with their industrial wheat, no one eats the heavy bread anymore. They tell him, people want the white loaf now, the bread of the future. He listens politely, but he does not sell. Perhaps stubbornness ties him to the land, or love, perhaps both. Though fewer in the village still till the soil, Aldrich continues to plant his father's Emmer seeds along the slope above the brook. He knows the yield won't fill even a single wagon now. But when the stalks turn gold, and he cuts them by hand, he can still hear the same soft hiss, as always the ancient whisper of patience, of endurance. On Sundays, the women in town bring bread from the new mill's white, airy loaves, soft as clouds, tasteless as air. Aldrich's bread sits darker and denser beside them, its crust deep and firm. Few choose it. Yet sometimes a traveler passing the mill will take a piece, only a bite, and his eyes will widen with surprise. I remember this, he'll murmur, though he's sure he never tasted it before. The new age presses on, smoke chokes the valleys, trees fall beneath the axes of expansion, and even the river grows lean from diverted water feeding the steamworks. Along the roads, posters promise jobs in far cities, Leeds, Birmingham, Lyon. Venice names that roll off tongues like distant bells. Aldrich's children, one by one, leave the valley for such places, drawn by lighted streets and factory wages. When at last the mill falls silent, its water wheel moss-covered and still, Aldrich locks its doors gently. He doesn't curse the change. He only stands for a while, hand against the wood, feeling its grain rough, imperfect, honest. Somewhere in that texture, he feels the same pulse his father once felt, a heartbeat slow and calm as seasons returning. Years later, long after his death, the watermill collapses from neglect. By then, the valley has emptied. It feels lie fallow, and only a fringe of Emmer grows wild along the brook, a ghost of its golden age. In the cities, wheat has triumphed. Flour gleams white in sacks that tower like temple columns. Bread is cheap, easy, uniform. People stop thinking of grain as life. It becomes product. Yet even within the roar of steam and market, The quiet grain waits. In monastery gardens and behind forgotten cottages, a few handfuls endure in jars. Sealed against damp and dust, monks, scholars, and old peasant widows keep them not for commerce, but for memory. One labels a jar in careful script, Triticum dicoccum, Emmer, the old wheat. A century later, that small note will be found again by curious hands. But here, for now, in the late 19th century, the valley sleeps beneath smoke and silence. The hills where autumns rust, the brook runs clearer than all the rivers swelling through the cities. And under a thin scattering of snow, seeds from Aldrich's last harvest lie still in the soil, unbothered by progress. The winds no longer hum through thick stalks of gold, but now and then, when twilight falls and mist drifts in from the river, the shape of those old fields seems to reappear. A trick of light, the villagers say, just the ground remembering its own story. And if you walk there at that hour, when everything's quiet but the murmuring water, you might swear the air carries a scent not of smoke but of fresh grain, warming gently in the last light of the sun. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. The 19th century breathes its last with a shudder of engines and soot. The 20th dawns not with sunlight through valley mists, but with the orange flare of furnaces, the rising hum of machines that no bird's song could match. Towns burst into city stone and iron, layered skyward, streets paved not in mud but in noise. In one such city, where gas lamps flicker beneath a haze of factories' smoke, a baker named Elise kneads dough in the half-light of dawn. Her shop crouches in a narrow lane near the market, tucked between a cobbler's workshop and a shop of mechanical parts. The windows tremble with every passing tram, yet within, the air still holds something from an older time, the smell of yeast, of coarse flour, of warm crust baking slowly in wood-fired heat. Elise's mother once told her about the valley where their family had lived. Before the railways came, she had described fields of bronze grain swaying under endless skies, a mill beside a brook, the sound of water against stone. Elise didn't remember it, but sometimes when she was alone she imagined she did. The feel of warm grain slipping between her fingers, the hush of fields. Before harvest, the bite of bread dense with the taste of earth and time. But that taste has nearly vanished from the world. The flour she works with now is white as snow, bleached by chemicals, sifted by machines. It feels soft and lifeless beneath her hands, too perfect, too clean. People don't want dark loaves anymore, her apprentices remind her. They want the bread that looks like the moon. Still, she keeps an old jar on her shelf. It sits at the far end, behind tins of sugar and bags of wheat. Inside, sealed tight, are grains the color of sunlight filtered through amber glassamer, saved by her grandmother before the valley fields were sold. Elise sometimes runs her palm over the jar's rough glass and feels the faint rattle as the kernels shift within. She doesn't know if they would even grow now, but she keeps them as others keep heirlooms or talismans. There's something comforting in their silence. Outside, the world bursts into war. Banners unfurl. Trains thunder southward, carrying sons and fathers in uniform. The bakeries work day and night, rationing flour, stretching the supply with whatever can be found: barley, rye, oats, even potato. Hunger makes people less particular. Bread grows browner again, heavier, closer to what it once was. In the chaos of shortages, Elise finds herself reaching for that jar. When she grinds the old grain in her mortar rough and slow, the way her grandmother taught her, the scent rises through the little room, shocking in its richness. Nut, smoke, honey, earth. The first loaf is small, uneven, cracked. But when she breaks it open, steam curls out in a scent unlike any other. Those who taste it in her shop fall quiet, eyes closing, as if remembering something beyond their own lives. Through both wars, through rationing and ruin, Elise bakes this bread in secret. For those who ask quietly, soldiers on leave, widows, children pale with hunger they come not for luxury but for solace, this one, they whisper, is warm in the belly. The city burns, the world fractures, yet her oven glows steady in its little room. When the wars end, the machines return in greater numbers than before. Great factories rise again, whiter and cleaner than ever. Food becomes industrial standardized, packed, sealed, lifeless. Bread, no longer needs hands. It comes from conveyors. The air that once smelled of grain and smoke now smells of oil and ash. Elise grows old. One winter evening, her apprentice, a young man named Matthew, locks the bakery for the night and finds her seated by the oven, a loaf cooling on her lap. The jar sits beside her, its lid open. I used the last of it, she says softly. What's gone is gone, but what's tasted once never dies. She dies soon after, and her apprentice carries her words as though they were scripture. Years later, when he opens his own bakery far from the city, he keeps a few kernels of the old grain in a tin by the till. He shows them to curious customers sometimes. This, he says, was the first bread, the bread of endurance. Generations turn. Machines perfect their craft. By mid-century, the dark bread is nearly forgotten, replaced by pale, soft loaves lined in plastic. Commercial fields stretch endless, all one gleaming gold, their roots shallow in the hurried soil. Emmer, the ancient, the steadfast, disappears outside a handful of universities and research plots. To most, it becomes a whisper of the past, a curiosity footnoted in dusty scholarship. But small traces survive. In alpine valleys where the machines never climbed, in old abbey gardens, in cold terraces carved into the earth by patient hands. A few seeds endure. They sleep beneath frost for decades, waiting for warmth, waiting for someone still enough to remember. One spring morning in the 1970s, a young botanist named Clara, hiking in those mountains, stumbles across a handful of plants growing wild strange. Bronze-headed, husked, she kneels, curious, and pockets a few of the seeds, thinking them quaint. Back at her university, she studies them under light, compares them to old diagrams, and realizes what she's found. Emmer, she writes in her notebook, Triticum dicoccum, alive and well. She plants them in a small patch of soil outside her lab, uncertain whether they will sprout. They do. Slowly, stubbornly, they rise. By midsummer, their heads shimmer gold and copper under the sun, alive again after sleeping through history itself. She stands among them, brush in hand, astonished at their scent. It is the same perfume that once filled the valley centuries ago. The light taste of the earth forgiving itself. In that moment, the wheel of time turns once more. The forgotten grain has returned, not to feed empires, but to remind. And far away, in the ruins of Aldrich's Valley, the wind stirs, carrying a faint smell of grain through the grass. The old soil still knows the song. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. The story shifts into a gentler age, where the echoes of war fade away, and the world, tired of its frantic pace, begins to listen again. It's almost like a collective sigh, you know? Somewhere between the hustle of progress and the warmth of memory, the old grain finds its breath once more. Picture this: Clara's little patch of Emmer, glowing golden in the sunlight. It is not a grand field, just a cozy corner of earth on a hillside outside her university. But when the wind dances through it, the sound is unmistakable. It's like a low whisper that belongs to another century, a soft reminder of days gone by. Each stalk shivers in rhythm, and every head leans toward its neighbor, creating this beautiful tapestry that stops passers-by in their tracks. What kind of wheat is that? They ask, puzzled by its darker hue and its stubborn husk that seems to resist touch. It's older than wheat, Clara replies with a quiet smile, her heart swelling with pride. One of the first, when she cuts it, threshes it by hand, and grinds it flat between stones just like the medieval millers did. An incredible scent fills her small kitchen. It's a sweetness she's never known before, nutty, smoky, warm like the sun. The flour feels heavier, almost alive under her fingers, and when she bakes with it, the bread that emerges fills her tiny home with a cozy warmth, dark, dense, and rich. It's like a hug in loaf form. She tastes it slowly, sitting alone at her wooden table, and it feels like history itself is sitting with her, warm and breathing across the years. At conferences, her colleagues smile at the romance of it all. Lovely for a curiosity, they say kindly, but not practical. The modern strains outyield it tenfold. She nods, not disagreeing, but there is something about this grain that lingers in her mind. The way it roots itself so quickly in poor soil. The way its husk protects it from pests that devour delicate hybrids. It's resilient, and she admires that. Clara carefully stores the seeds, handing a few envelopes to farmer friends as small gifts. Just try, she encourages them. See what happens. And in quiet corners of Europe, they do. A farmer in southern France sows a handful along a rocky hill that his machines can handle. A woman in northern Italy plants it in a forgotten terrace above her vineyard. A shepherd in Austria spreads it where no modern wheat could grow. Year after year, the seed takes hold, surprising everyone. They find it doesn't need pesticides or irrigation. It simply endures, steady as memory. This grain had slept for centuries, but now it wakes slow and soft, stretching after a long dream. It spreads not through commerce, but through conversation letters exchanged, jars passed hand to hand, whispers carried softly on the winds across fields that had almost forgotten the weight of such resilience. By the late 20th century, the word begins to return Emmer, faro antico, spelta rustica. In bakeries once more, dark loaves appear behind glass, their crusts crackling, their scent pulling passers-by. To stillness, Chefs rave about its depth and heritage flavor. Nutritionists can't stop praising its strength. Farmers smile, watching it rise tall, where even weeds once struggled. Yet this revival is never loud. It's gentle, just like the grain itself, spreading through the world quietly, like moonlight softly illuminating furrows. Old valleys bloom again, not vast with monoculture, but mottled, textured, alive with difference. Small flocks graze through the fields, bells tinkling as lambs nibble down the margins. Windmills creak back to motion, their sails restored not for nostalgia, but out of necessity. One evening, Clara visits one of these restored farms in the foothills of the Alps. She walks between the rippling rows, the stalks brushing against her hands. The air is high and thin, filled with the sense of thyme and grain, as summer cools toward dusk. The farmer beside her, an old man with a voice like dry leaves, gestures toward the field. You see, he says, it asks little only for care. They stop by the stone mill where small sacks of flour lean in a row. Sunlight streams through the doorway, creating golden stripes as dust motes dance in the air. He hands her a loaf baked that morning, still faintly warm. Clara breaks it open, and steam escapes like a gentle breath. The crumb is dark, tight, and fragrant. She takes a bite and closes her eyes, letting the flavors wash over her. It tastes, she says softly, like rest. The man chuckles, a warm sound that feels like a shared secret. Yes, like the world before her. As dusk deepens, shadows stretch across the grain, and crickets begin their evening song. The air hums softly with the sounds of turning wheels and distant bells. For the first time in centuries, this land feels whole again, not frozen in time, but reconciled with it. The past and present walk side by side, patient as twin oxen drawing the same plough. Down in the valleys, bakers light their ovens, filling the air with the warm scent of baking bread. In Florence, small shops sell dark loaves flecked with the seeds of resurrection. In Bavaria, brewers experiment with Emmer ale, marveling at its quiet sweetness. In the mountains of Liguria, mothers stir it into porridge for their children, just as the peasants of old once did. This isn't a revolution. It's a remembering. It's about reconnecting with our roots, quite literally. Years later, when Clara retires, she finds herself drawn back to that first hillside where she planted the seeds so long ago. The field stands golden, rippling slowly under the evening sun, and the air smells of chamomile and grain husks. Kneeling down, she lets the seeds run through her fingers, warm and rough. "Welcome back," she whispers, her heart swelling with gratitude. The wind rushes gently through the valley, answering her with a sound she's long since learned to recognize, the sigh of living memory. In the next part, we'll wander deeper into these golden fields, exploring the stories they hold and the lives they touch. It's a journey worth taking, don't you think? The century turns again, and the world, vast and bright with restless motion, circles back in slow wonder to the things it almost forgot. After decades of rushing towards speed, people begin to look instead for quiet, for steadiness, for stories in their food, for meaning in the earth's patient labor. And somehow, through all that noise and hunger and change, Emmer is waiting right where it always was, in northern Tuscany, where clouds gather low over stone terraces and poppies bloom between the olive trees. A small family farm wakes with the dawn. The farmer, Matteo, steps out into the cool air with his boots damp from dew, listening to the birdsong that always comes before sunrise. His grandparents had once left the countryside for city work. They lived under neon lights, eating bread wrapped in plastic and made in silence. But when Matteo was a boy, his grandmother told him stories of another kind of bread, the dark, fragrant sort that broke with weight and tasted of the fields. He never forgot those stories. Now, he walks through a valley that feels almost unchanged from 1,000 years before. The air smells faintly sweet, touched with the scent of grain and wild fennel. His fields are narrow, stitched into the hillside, their edges lined with lavender and sage to keep pests away. The stalks of Emmer rise thick and heavy, burnished bronze beneath the morning light. They don't stand in neat military rows, but lean instead in gentle chaos, alive and uneven, speaking softly in the wind. The soil beneath his boots is rich, loosened by years of natural cycles, compost, roots, worms, rain. No chemical harshness, no desperate push for yield. The Emmer doesn't need it. Its roots run deep. It remembers how to live without human hurry. Matteo bends to test ahead, rubbing a few grains loose in his palm. The husks are tough, the color warm as honey in old glass. He bites one. It's firm, nutty, familiar. Above, the sun climbs slowly, gold spilling down the slopes and washing the fields with a softened gleam, like memory becoming light. Later, his wife, Lucia, bakes. The house, with its broad hearth and shuttered windows, fills with a rising scent so old it seems to belong to another tongue entirely. The Emmer flower is coarser than the pale commercial kind. It clings to her skin like the soft dust from clay. She adds only water, salt, and a little pre-fermented starter she's tended for years, a living inheritance of invisible life. Kneading takes time. The dough resists, then yields. When it finally rests under its linen cloth, she sits near the window and listens to the wind rattling olive leaves outside. By afternoon, the oven's stone belly glows orange. Lucia slides the rounded loaves in on wooden paddles. The smell blooms at once. Toasted nut, faint caramel, something earthy enough to make even the old cat at her feet lift its head. When she pulls the bread out hours later, the crusts sing fine cracks forming, releasing wisps of fragrant steam. That night, the family eats outdoors. The table sits beneath fig trees thick with ripening fruit. Cicadas drone lazily in the darkening air. Bowls of lentils and olive oil, roasted vegetables, and sliced cheese dot the boards. But it's the bread that centers everything. Matteo cuts it thick, his knife meeting slow resistance. The slices steam faintly under the stars. The first bite is both heavy and light, carrying the warmth of the oven and the sweetness of the field. Their children chew quietly, eyes half closed with contentment. Lucia smiles. Your great-grandmother would recognize this smell, she says softly. Matteo nods, gazing toward the fields invisible now in the dark. Maybe she guided it back to us. In other parts of the world, too, such tables begin to fill. In distant continents, chefs rediscover Emmer, calling it a heritage grain, a phrase both new and old. They marvel at its flavor, at its strength in poor soils, at its ability to forgive a changing climate. In kitchens that once prized perfection, now there is reverence for imperfection, bread that feels human again, uneven and warm. Some farms in far northern lands plant it to, daring frost and altitude. In valleys of Colorado, terraces of Greece, high plains of India it grows again. Its grain holds sunlight the same way it did 1,000 years ago, reflecting none of its pride, only calm endurance. And through it all, the sound returns, a rustling chorus beneath the wind, soft as sighs, long as memory, feels alive again with color and sway, patches of bronze stitched into a quilt of modern gold. Back in Tuscany, Matteo stands one evening at the edge of his land as dusk drapes the valley. He watches the last light drift across the spines of the hills, catching the tips of the grain. From far away, the field could be mistaken for common wheat. Only up close does it reveal its difference, the deeper hue, the taller stalks, the timeless patience in its motion. He knows that even if he vanished tomorrow, the soil would hold the seed, waiting for the warmth of another spring. That's how the grain has always been, not owned, not invented, but inherited. A bridge between centuries, a conversation with the earth that never truly ends. He walks back toward the house, the smell of baked bread wrapping around him as softly as the evening air. The moon, low and wide, hangs above the ridge like a coin suspended by invisible thread. In the distance, an owl calls once low and rounded, and the sound carries through the stillness. The field hums in answer, and as the stars blink awake in the vast sky, Matteo feels a sense of connection to the land, the past, and the future. Each grain of Emmer holds a story, a whisper of generations who have come before him, who have toiled in the soil, and who have shared the simple joy of breaking bread together. In the coming days, he'll teach his children the stories, the rituals of planting and harvesting, and the art of baking. He wants them to feel that connection, to understand that food is more than just sustenance. It's a legacy. It's laughter around the table, the warmth of the sun on their backs, and the satisfaction of a job well done. As the seasons change, so too will their lives. They'll learn about the cycles of nature, the importance of patience, and the beauty of imperfection. They'll discover that while the world may rush forward, there's magic in slowing down, in savoring each moment, and in honoring the earth that nurtures them. In this little corner of Tuscany, life unfolds in rhythms as old as time. The fields will continue to sway in the breeze, the bread will rise in the warmth of the oven, and the stories will be passed down, echoing through the generations. So, let's wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part, where we'll uncover more about the traditions, the flavors, and the heart of this beautiful land. We'll meet more of the people who make it special, hear their stories, and taste the fruits of their labor. Because here, every grain, every loaf, and every shared meal tells a story worth telling. Night stretches soft and wide across the valleys. The fields rest, whispering in low tones as the wind moves gently over them. The stars gleam faintly above, their reflections caught in dew that beads on every husk and blade. In the quiet distance, You could almost hear the hum of centuries, the faint millstone heartbeats, the rhythm of harvest songs, the sighs of earth breathing slowly through its own sleep. Mateo's farm lies still. The bread baked that evening cools on wooden boards by the window, its crusts cracking quietly as they release their warmth. In the air lingers the fragrance of toasted grain, olive wood, and faint sweetness from the figs nearby. The family sleeps, their breaths blending with the rhythm of night crickets. Beyond the shutters, only the field seems awake, its amber crown turning silver under moonlight. The Emmer stands proud and simple, centuries deep in its memory yet light as air tonight. Its stalks have seen so much. The first dawns of ploughs drawn by oxen, the candles of abbey kitchens, kiln fires smoking beneath stone ovens, fields abandoned to smoke and war, hands that forgot it and hands that remembered. Somewhere between those hands and now, it has carried itself through darkness, never asking for more than a little care, never ceasing to be. There is something holy about its patience. A far wind stirs from the west, brushing the fields into motion. The sound it makes is like breathing heard from another world, steady, slow, and full of calm endurance. In that whisper lives every farmer who sowed without promise, every mother who kneaded beside the glow of a flame, every child who bit into bread made dark and fragrant by fire. Emmer doesn't speak in words, yet it has always told the same story. The earth gives, we tend, and for a moment, we share its strength. In the nearby village, a young baker rises early. He grinds a mix of flours in his mill, turning Emmer with rye, letting the stones spin slow as morning. The sound fills his shop like a heartbeat. When he bakes, the scent spills out into narrow streets, waking neighbors before sunrise. Passers-by pause outside his window and smile without knowing why. It feels like an old warmth, carried forward, a comfort they can't quite name. And across oceans, in places once foreign to this grain, new fields shimmer under strange skies, North American plains brushed with bronze, Indian foothills green with shoots, high Scandinavian meadows rustling in long daylight. Everywhere it grows, it carries the same softness, the same quiet resilience, the same faint perfume of smoked honey and rain. On Mateo's land, the seasons turn again. Spring's bright greening, summer's hum, autumn's gold, winter's stillness, each phase as steady as a heartbeat, measured not in years but in harvests, in bread cooling, in seed stored for yet another spring. Lucia's children now tend the fields. They know the stories, passed down in fragments across kitchen tables, of the monk who wrote Emmerum Solva's nose in Latin script, of the farmer who refused to stop planting even when no one bought his grain, of the woman who baked through war and hunger because the smell of warm Emmer bread reminded the starving that life still had flavor. In every loaf they bake now, those stories live again, not as myth, but as quiet truth. When they cut into the bread, they see not just their harvest, but the promise carried forward, the link between what was and what is. Some nights, when the moon is high and the fields gleam pale under its light, Lucia sits on the stone wall that edges the farmland, listening. The wind moves across the slope in waves, making the Emmer shimmer as though it were alive in thought. She can almost hear the melodies her ancestors once sang, the hollow drone of flutes. Soft voices in unseen languages calling thanks to earth and stars. Her eyes grow heavy, half closed in reverence. "We came back to you," she whispers, "and you never left." The night deepens, folding the land into itself. The brook murmurs softly beside the fields, and somewhere far down the slope, the old millstones glint faintly. Through creepers and moss, the river still turns them a little, not for grinding now, but simply out of habit. Its low rumble joins the chorus of field and sky. Across centuries, across wars and harvests, this sound is unchanged. It is this song of time made tender. And if you were to stand there barefoot, eyes closed, hands open to the air, you might feel all of it at once. The cool damp of the soil that once fed kingdoms. The slow warmth rising from bread pulled fresh from a stone oven 1,000 years ago. The pulse of water and wind and seed carrying itself forward, never tired, never loud, only faithful. The forgotten grain no longer asks to be remembered. It simply continues. That is enough. As dawn edges upward, the mist lifts from the valley. Light spills once more over the golden slopes, washing everything in quiet gold. Birds call. The oxen low softly in their pens. And a new day begins, warm with promise. Somewhere, a child runs to the window, awakened by that same smell, fresh bread from the hearth, crust cracking under air, scent heavy with time. The world turns, gentle in its remembering, and the field, eternal and forgiving, hums its lullaby again. Stay, rest, eat, remember, for even in this modern age, the heart of history still beats softly in a loaf of bread. We'll wander deeper into these golden fields in the next part. The night has come down soft as flower dust. The air over the valley lies warm and full, scented faintly of charred wood, wild herbs, and the sweetness of drying grain. Far off, the sound of a brook threads between small stones, wrapping the dark in its low whisper. The stars have gathered above like seeds scattered wide by some unseen hand, each one bright enough to see the fields below swelling under their hush, silvered in moonlight, endless in calm. The Emmer waves faintly in that pale light. Every stalk bends and sways like a dream breathing. The husks shimmer, bright near their tips, fading to bronze where they meet the earth. A breeze passes through, and for an instant the whole field is alive with motion, whispering in 1,000 voices, a language of pure rest. From the farmhouse on the hill, a thin line of lamplight lays across the path. Inside, the hearth embers glow in a slow rhythm, each flicker a heartbeat of the evening. A loaf cools on the wood, its crust dark, its cracks sighing open in faint sound. The air carries that perfume once more, the smell of time, baked and kind, bread without edge. Life's gentle echo. Lucia's children sleep upstairs. Their breaths rise and fall behind shuttered windows, steady as tides. In some half-dream, their grandmother's stories drift through their minds, the golden field under the harvest moon, the first monks grinding grain at dusk, the farmer whose oxen carved furrows through mist, the bakers who worked by the light of a single candle. All those lives, all those hands, all those hours, folded invisibly into the same loaf of bread. Outside, The fox pads softly along the outer hedges, his steps silent in the stubble. An owl cries low from the oaks, its sound mournful yet serene, a call that seems to last forever. The wind lifts again and turns toward the house, carrying the soft rustle of the field to the walls, brushing through the open windows like a blessing. Every board in the cottage seems to breathe, every shadow gentles. If you could stand there on that path between the field and the door, you would feel the shape of peace, the earthy scent of grain clinging to the air, the quiet strength beneath your feet, the soft drift of the wind pressing against your sleeve. You would hear the field breathing out, its lullaby ancient and familiar. Rest now. The work is done. The hands are folded. The bread is cooling. The day is laid to sleep. Tomorrow will rise again. Golden. That calm sinks into everything. The stones, the air, the slow pulse of the river. It reaches down, even to the oldest of roots, the ones that have lain buried since the dawn of ploughs, since the first village fires. The roots of Emmer, twined deep, feeling the hum of the earth's slow heart. The grain drifts in dreaming now. The moonlight slides across it like a silver tide, washing row by row in steady grace. The world holds its breath. For the length of a sight perhaps, an era that ages collapse into stillness. Every story you've heard tonight gathers into one. A field in the dark, an oven's glow, a loaf breathed alive by care. All the rest is silence and the sound of wind through husk. In that silence, time loses its urgency. The past leans gently into the present, and both settle into the same drowsy rhythm that moves through the soil, slow, cyclical, eternal. The millstones are quiet now, but their song lingers. The scent of bread floats faint in the air, and the first birds stir long before dawn. The field, vast and soft beneath the stars, whispers to no one in particular, as it always has. We are still here. We were never gone. And as sleep folds itself around the valley around the house, the field, the river, and the ghosts of laboring hands, the world exhales into peace. The grain waits under the moon. The seeds cradle tomorrow. The heart of the earth thrums steady beneath your feet. And so, the story closes where it began. Golden fields beneath a gentle sky. A loaf cooling on the hearth. The quiet promise of another dawn. Breathe. Rest. Dream. For morning will come. And with it, bread warm from the stone again.